Hey everybody, it's Buffy G. Thanks for tuning in to my blog. It's been a minute since I did a little bit of a blogging, only because I've been really sick, feeling very weak. It's just kind of the side effects of dialysis, which is something that I might get to touch on a little bit today. But from this point forward, I will try to take you along with me on everyday activities. It's just that just starting it out, I just want to make sure that people get the concept of where I'm going with this. And then if you like it, you can subscribe at the bottom and make sure you get, your alerts so that you can know when I put out another one. So right now it's middle of July and it's sweltering heat out here in Houston where I'm at. So that kind of makes everything a little bit more intensified because I have to drive in that heat and I'm exhausted after dialysis. So you can only imagine what that feels like. So right now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the medications that I take, or just not really talk in detail about them, but just let you know. Currently I take about, my last count was 13 medications. Now, some people don't take that many medications on dialysis and others do, because dialysis causes your body to just go through this metamorphosis, basically, of all these things going on with you. It just changes and everything. Your skin becomes drier, your hair becomes more brittle. You might have a lot of itching depending on how high your phosphorus levels in your body get, because that's a no-no when it comes to dialysis. Three things they make us look out for. We have to watch how much fluid we take in. The second would be potassium, and then the third would be phosphorus levels, because all those things get very dangerous. You really feel the side effects from it, and trust me, I have felt the side effects from all of those things. So, for instance, if your phosphorus gets too high, you might start itching a lot and can't really soothe the itch. And that's uncomfortable, especially when you have to lay somewhere in a chair for hours upon hours itching. So you need to watch that. It can also do damage to your heart. Potassium as well. Potassium can really stop your heart if it's too high, and stop you from being able to really walk, and literally affect your heart in many ways. But it's gotten to the point before where my potassium was so extremely low that I literally could not walk. My muscles were aching, my bones were aching, and I thought, okay, so what's going on? And I ended up having to go to the emergency room, and it was because my potassium was messed up and my phosphorus was messed up. So they take you through a couple of things to get that corrected, but you end up staying in the hospital until it becomes manageable and at a good level. So I ended up doing that. I've been in the hospital countless times. I don't even think two hands can cover the number of times I've been in the hospital, just for various reasons associated with the kidney failure and being on dialysis. Some people go in and they have a great treatment and it lasts that way for them for a while, but eventually at some point you do have trouble. It depends on what the trouble is. It may be something very, very small, or it could be something big. Like, some people not only go into kidney failure, but then they become diabetic as well. Or they might become very, very sick, as far as being able to keep food down. And there's just a number of things that added on top of the fact that you're exhausted afterwards, and the fact that you really don't have a lot of things helping you at that point, because when you are in dialysis and they do the dialysis on you, the machine doesn't know the difference between good and bad, so it takes everything out of there. You need to replenish yourself afterwards, and sometimes that's hard to do, especially when you're on a fluid restriction. Now, when I say fluid restriction, I mean, yes, they want you to limit the amount of water that you take in, because if you don't know already, a lot of dialysis patients no longer urinate. Some of them do, some of them don't, not all. And if that's the case, then how do you get rid of fluids that you drink other than sweating? So when you drink too much fluids, it can build up in your system. It could cause major swelling. It can restrict your limbs. There's just so many things that it can do to you. Plus the fact that you're walking around with all this fluid that you drink on you, in your body, and your body starts to swell and you start feeling very uncomfortable. Sometimes you can also get fluid around your heart. It's just a number of things that you can go through. So you have to constantly, be aware of what you're putting in. You have to watch salt, because Salt can also make you swell up because makes you retain fluid. So that's something you got to watch. Some of the other things associated with that, you have to watch anything that has phosphorus and too much potassium, like French fries. Most of us love French fries. But that's basically like a no-no food for us because it has a lot of potassium in that. And I'm one of those patients that if I listened to every single no-no that they told me to do about food, I would probably weigh about 60 pounds because I'm not much of an eater anyway. So, but what I do is now, I watch. Like if I want some French fries, I'll have some French fries. I might have a small amount of French fries, but I have a little bit, and I always take what we call binders. I always take my binders, and what they do is they bind all that potassium and phosphorus from going into your body. Well, mainly phosphorus, but they bind those things from going to your body and they get expelled directly. So that way, your body level, your chemistry levels, as far as your blood wise, they stay at the same level, and they don't go elevated. And there are times though when you are taking too many of your binders and they drop too low because it has to be between certain ranges. And I'll talk about that later and maybe in the next blog exactly what levels they need to be at for them to be considered normal or within range. But that's one of the things. And let's say, for instance, cheese. Cheese is a no-no. Soda. I'm not a soda drinker anyway. I love cheese, but I don't get cheese on everything. If I want a piece of cheese on something, I'll have it, but it's not like I'm going to have that every day. I might have that once, maybe twice a week, if that. And you can look for cheese that are low in, phosphorus or low in potassium or low in whatever. You always can look for those alternate brands. And if you love cheese that much, but they don't want you to have tomatoes, which is like tomatoes. I can't eat tomatoes. That'll just be like the end of the world for me because I love lasagna. I love spaghetti. I like some red sauces on different things except for pizza. But I don't eat those things a lot. So that part of it doesn't affect me. There's a whole list of things that you really can't have, or they don't want you to have, or limit your intake of while you're on dialysis. And I can probably bring those up, make a list and kind of like talk about those a little bit more on my next blog. But basically that's how it works. And you have to make sure that you try to take your medications that they give you at the same time every day because they are more effective that way. So I try to make sure I do that, but I do forget a lot, and I'm like, oh, I didn't take them, and I immediately go take them. But it's just something that if you're not a pill taker, it's a hard thing to transition to. For me, it wasn't. I didn't mind. It didn't really, affect me. I was never had to take a lot of medication until this happened. But I got used to it after like a couple of months. I was like, okay, this is easy. I can do it because it just became so common for me. But at the same time, there are still people that are on it and just don't like taking medication. And so if you don't like taking your medication, you're going to have a hard time with a lot of things. I always try to make sure that you can do that you take your medication, that you're abiding by the things that they say. You can talk to the dietitian even in your dialysis unit, because all the dialysis units, they have a dietitian, they have a social worker, and if you feel like your diet, you need to discuss that. You can discuss that with a dietitian and tell them, hey, this is how I feel. So at one point when I first started dialysis, I was following all those food rules, and I wasn't eating any of that stuff, but my weight dropped scarcely low. I was at 98 pounds at one point, and I was lethargic. I was very lethargic and ill. It was just crazy. And they were like, oh, well, you need to put on weight. I'm like, how can I put on weight when the foods that I eat or like, I can't have any of them? So now I'm limited to, literally I was buying Jell-O and eating Jell-O. I gave up, what was it? I gave up eating beef for a while because you also get very smell sensitive and taste sensitive on dialysis. It's almost like being pregnant, but all the time, because sometimes you can be sitting there and be really, really hungry, but if you smell a certain food, you're just like ill. And I'll tell you about an incident, and then I'll kind of get off the blog. But the incident that happened to me was I used to live in, as you know, Florida, and there was a particular restaurant there that sold rotisserie style chicken. And this is when I kind of found out that I was literally something's wrong with me, because I remember I went to this place and I ordered the food. It looked so good. I had went through the drive-thru and I ordered it. And so I get in the car and I'm driving down the street, and then I probably got 2 blocks. The smell was permeating from the bag. And normally that never bothered me, but the smell of it I was just becoming more and more ill as I drove. So I ended up, just bought the food. I ended up having to pull over into like some parking lot somewhere with a dumpster and threw all of the food away because I could not drive home with the food in the car. I literally felt like I was going to pass out from the smell. And it wasn't even like a bad smell or anything like that. It was just that's how your body is on dialysis. Becomes very, very sensitive to things like that. So when that happened, I was like, oh, that is so weird. I wonder what's wrong with that food. I'm thinking, did they do something to the food? And I was like, no, you eat there all the time, so there's pretty much no reason. And so then from there, it kind of progressed on to where like I told you in my first blog, my second blog, that I ended up having to go and see a doctor, and found out that I was, in kidney failure. But anyway, so that's just one of the things, some food sensitivity. Also light sensitivity. They don't want you out in the sun a lot because of the medications that you take. They don't really tell you don't drink, but they don't tell you to drink either. So, you can, I know people that have a glass of wine here and there. I know that's not harming you. But, since you don't have kidney function, you kind of want to make sure you're not an alcoholic and you're not drinking every day, But, like me, for instance, I might have a glass of wine, and that is my limit, a glass of wine. I don't like to get, like, further than a glass of wine. Or I might have, like recently I went to a party for the 4th of July, and I had a wine cooler, and then I had a little Jello shots, and that was completely it for me. And I could have really just stopped at the wine cooler, but I just ate the Jello shots because I hadn't had one of those in years. And I was like, and they had 2 flavors. They had like the red and the green. So I was like, okay, I'll try that. And that was it for me. After that, I just drank water. I just started drinking water, and it, it was more of the taste than actually it doing anything to me. So, some people can do that, but I do know, I've seen, being in dialysis, I've seen people get kidney transplants and be off of kidney dialysis for a year and become heavy drinkers, partying and celebrating, and it sends their kidney back into reject mode. So they back into dialysis after that. So, that's not something that you want to do either, and because, you're already going through dialysis and your body's tired, that kind of limits you on exercise too. Most people, like, they can do the walking part of it, but climbing a lot of hills and walking briskly, sometimes it gets you winded. Even like right now, I'm about 137 pounds right now. And even at that, it's not extremely heavy and it's not extremely light, but it still kind of gets me winded sometimes, should I say. I'm sorry, winded, when I walk too fast. So I have to take it slow. So those are just some of the things associated with dialysis and ESRD, which is end-stage renal disease. So if you have any questions about some other things, you feel free to leave me a comment or a question, and I'll be happy to answer for you. But don't forget, under any circumstances, don't forget, click subscribe. I'm Buffy G. My eyes through the way that I see things is the way that I'm putting them out here to you. So this is looking through my eyes at dialysis. Take care. Have a good day. I'm out.